All right, let's talk about psoriasis. Psoriasis is a chronic, immune-mediated inflammatory disease that affects mainly the skin but has systemic involvement as well. The word psoriasis actually comes from Greek, which means itchy skin. It is considered recurrent, meaning it goes in flare-ups, with periods of exacerbation going all the way to partial or complete remission. It is usually quite common, affecting almost 2% of the general population, no matter the age. There are multiple subtypes of psoriasis. However, plaque psoriasis is the most common, accounting for about 80 to 90% of cases. It presents as sharply demarcated erythematous plaques covered with scale that can look white or silvery. When the scale is removed, pinpoint bleeding may be seen due to exposed dilated dermal capillaries. This is also known as the Auspitz sign. Lesions may occur anywhere, but they most often affect the scalp and the extensor surfaces of the elbows and knees. We often see pruritus, which occurs in roughly 60 to 90% of patients and ranges from mild to severe itching. However, persistent scratching can lead to excoriations and also skin thickening. Guttate psoriasis commonly follows a streptococcal upper respiratory tract infection, especially in children and young adults, and is characterized by numerous small, fine, scaly, drop-like lesions, mainly on the trunk and the limbs. Pustular psoriasis is marked by yellowish or brown pustules forming under the skin, most often on the palms and soles. The pustules are sterile and not infectious. Another severe form is erythrodermic psoriasis. It causes near generalized redness with fine scaling involving about 90 to 100% of the body's surface. It can be painful, and patients are usually at risk of developing complications related to loss of adequate barrier protection, such as infections and electrolyte abnormalities secondary to fluid loss. About 1/3 of people with psoriasis may develop nail changes and/or joint involvement. Psoriatic arthritis can be destructive and most often affects the distal interphalangeal joints of the fingers and toes. It is usually asymmetric and often affects less than 5 small joints. Nail psoriasis can cause pitting, thickening, and discoloration, sometimes with separation of the nail plate, and it may mimic a fungal infection. Psoriasis can be associated with ocular findings as well. It may produce conjunctivitis, corneal lesions, and even uveitis, leading to ocular discomfort, crusting within the eyelashes, and swollen eyelids. How does psoriasis actually occur? We will start with the normal skin layers. Essentially, the epidermis has 5 layers: basal, spinosum, granulosum, lucidum, and corneum. In the normal situation, keratinocytes, the main cells of the epidermis, are born in the stratum basal, migrate upward through the epidermis, changing and growing, we call this differentiation, and eventually reach the stratum corneum, where they form the skin's protective outer layer. In psoriasis, however, these cells are produced in greater numbers and move upward much faster, so they don't have enough time to mature properly. As a result, they accumulate at the surface and form the well-known thick, scaly plaques. But how does all of this happen? Basically, the immune system goes off the rails and starts sending inflammatory signals, starting with the dendritic cells. Dendritic cells, often referred to as Langerhans cells, they act like sensors for certain intruders, what we call pathogenic agents. These can be microbes, proteins, detritus, whatever. As a response to these pathogens, dendritic cells release inflammatory messages, specifically interleukins, to Th17 lymphocytes, with one of the most important being interleukin 23, IL-23. As a result, Th17 cells will produce other cytokines, particularly IL-17 and IL-22, that will reach the keratinocytes and will push them to grow too quickly and to differentiate abnormally. As a result, keratinocytes pile up at the surface of the skin and form the characteristic scaly plaques we often see in psoriasis. And because they aren't fully prepared to reach the surface so fast, they in turn trigger more inflammatory signals and recruit neutrophils and other inflammatory cells, creating a self-sustaining inflammatory loop. Clinically, this shows up as redness and itching that are so characteristic of this condition. So, We've explained why psoriasis is an inflammatory disease, but what actually triggers this inflammation? There are two main explanations. The first is the patient's strong genetic background. Around 1 in 3 people with psoriasis also has an affected family member. The second is the presence of external, so-called triggers. A good example is a streptococcal infection after a simple cold, a common pharyngitis for instance, which can trigger guttate psoriasis. Other triggers can include stress, obesity, smoking, or traumatic events affecting the skin, also known as the Koebner phenomenon. Certain medications, such as lithium, beta blockers, nonsteroidal anti-inflammatories, and some antibiotics like amoxicillin, can also act as triggers. The diagnosis is primarily set based on history, clinical, and physical examination. However, if there are some uncertainties, a skin biopsy can be also performed. During histopathology, we may see epidermal hyperplasia, a process called acanthosis, as well as classic findings such as Monroe microabscesses, which are basically neutrophils in the stratum corneum, strong signs of inflammation in the skin. So, how do we treat this psoriasis? Management options vary widely depending on the psoriasis subtype and how severe it is. Disease is often considered mild when it involves less than 10% of body surface area, and severity can be assessed using scoring tools such as the Psoriasis Area and Severity Index. The initial therapy usually includes topical corticosteroids, which are applied once or twice a day. We often start with a milder option, such as hydrocortisone. However, in more severe disease, we increase the potency all the way to betamethasone valerate. In addition to that, patients can add emollients and moisturizers, which will improve skin hydration and may help address the dryness and itching often associated with psoriasis. Another treatment option is topical vitamin D analogs, such as calcipotriol or calcitriol, which can be particularly useful, especially if they are administered alongside corticosteroids. These help normalize keratinocyte growth and differentiation. There are also steroid-sparing treatments, which include topical calcineurin inhibitors, such as tacrolimus or pimecrolimus, as well as topical retinoids, such as tazarotene. These drugs will affect keratinocyte differentiation and will decrease the pro-inflammatory signals to the skin. Targeted phototherapy is another potential treatment of psoriasis. The two major forms are targeted ultraviolet B and psoralen plus ultraviolet A, also abbreviated as PUVA, which is actually a type of photochemotherapy. They reduce the epidermal growth, therefore making the plaques smaller, as well as minimizing inflammation beneath the skin. They are particularly useful if they are used exactly on the affected parts, but can come with additional side effects including burning, redness, and sometimes itching. Fortunately, the side effects are often limited and will not last for a very long time. Systemic therapies may include medications such as methotrexate, cyclosporin, or acitretin, especially in more extensive disease or when topical therapy and phototherapy are not enough. Biologic therapies are also used, including monoclonal antibodies such as TNF inhibitors, IL-23 inhibitors, and IL-17 inhibitors. These treatments are chosen based on severity, comorbidities, and patient factors, and they usually require monitoring. In general, topical therapy is appropriate for mild plaque or flexural psoriasis, while phototherapy and/or systemic agents are added for moderate to severe disease, including erythrodermic, pustular, nail psoriasis, and psoriatic arthritis. Before we wrap things up, let's do a quick clinical recap. A 45-year-old man with a history of plaque psoriasis presents with 2 weeks of diffuse redness and scaling. 3 weeks ago, he abruptly stopped cyclosporin because he felt better. Since then, his rash rapidly spread and now involves almost his entire body. He feels weak and chilled and has had low-grade fevers. Exam shows generalized erythema with fine scale covering greater than 90% of body surface area. Which of the following is the most likely diagnosis? A. Plaque psoriasis. B. Guttate psoriasis. C. Pustular psoriasis. D. Erythrodermic psoriasis. The correct answer is D. Erythrodermic psoriasis. As we've previously seen, erythrodermic psoriasis is a severe, near-whole-body flare that can also cause systemic symptoms. In this particular case, it was triggered by interruption of therapy. The symptoms occur because the skin can't maintain its normal barrier function, and in many cases, this is a medical emergency due to fluid loss, electrolyte abnormalities, and impaired temperature regulation. I hope you enjoyed the video and that you found it helpful. Feel free to leave a like or a comment. All feedback is really appreciated. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.